everyone. Happy that you are all here. I'm just going to do a quick sound check just to make sure you can hear me good. Okay, so thought I'd show you something. My daughter made me a scarf. She's learning how to crochet, and her grandmother gave her some wonderful ideas. So I've had a wonderful week. I hope you have too. Okay. So this week we're going to talk about the rejection of Liberals. And the polling suggests that the New South Wales Liberals are tipped to lose. But remember, polling is a bit of a strange sort of bedfellow. It doesn't always end out the way that you want. So make sure that you vote to vote the Liberals out, and ensure that you get your own message out there about how you want to see New South Wales look. I definitely do want to see a red New South Wales. Next, we're going to talk about the rejection of the Liberals in Victoria. What come out of that in the dissecting of that? Is Bruce Lehmann suing? And will it work? Barnaby had created this week an own goal in Parliament. The election day vote scandal. So if you remember, on when the federal election came, they sent out these text messages, the Liberals did, saying that these votes were all going to arrive. Turns out that was a mistake. We have also coming up Peter Dutton. He seems to have taken a leaf out of the Dr. No sort of thing going on that Tony Abbott had, and has mimicked that kind of style. The LNP want to intervene on education around the voice. We're going to talk about if you can bullshit a bullshitter. That's going to be an interesting part, and yes, that's political. Did Fox know the truth when they were talking about Dominion and Smartmatic in the US election, and the Republican stunt that spectacularly backfired? So let's start off with our very first story. We're going to talk about if Garth Ward has been barred from the New South Wales Parliament, but yet he's still acting as a part of the Liberal Party. Now, this is obviously not because the Liberals have grown a conscience. No. That's not how they work, or else none of them would have turned up to George Pell's funeral. I mean, that's evident. This is because we're close to an election. Make no mistake, they don't do things because it's the moral thing to do. They don't have them. But what they do, interestingly, have is an understanding of how election cycles work. So let's take a look at how Garth Ward is being presented. This is quite an interesting look at. So earlier today, I did do up a small write-up of this, but I think it's better to break down exactly how terribly this has been taken in. Now, remember, they did do something similar federally with Catherine Deves. They did try to distance themselves. And I mean, look, you're going to hire scumbags to do something. Don't be mad when people find out that you're hiring a scumbag. The train has already left the station. It's a little bit late now to go complaining about the scumbag that you hired. I mean, there are red flags everywhere for most of these people. Catherine Deves particularly had this grotesque way about her. It wouldn't have even been difficult to, like, you know, search a little bit of her history on social media. They have a thing called the Wayback, and you can look through the sort of characterization and the build-up of who they are. And there was no doubt in my mind that when that happened, very similar actions that are being taken now, is all just a public front. They always say publicly, I will reject that person, you know, if they get elected. They don't really. They just want to tell you that so they can get over the election. Labor, literally, if they see someone that they don't like, they're like, no, we'll just drop them. Just no affiliation with them at all. And we'll call them out right then and there. And it's quite interesting how quick, when the left sees something that they don't like, how it's quick that swift move is. It's just like, nope, we'll cut you off at the source. That's not the Liberals' approach. It's just, oh no, we don't want to associate ourselves with that before the election. Afterwards, they're all fine. Like, if this guy died tomorrow, they'd be like, we're rocking up. Okay. So on Thursday night, in the GATH ward was having a press conference, and it was a really strange one because there are a lot of journalists that had turned up to this. They were talking to the Labor candidate, the Greens candidate, and then there was Garth Ward's turn. Now, what's interesting is that he holds a seat of Kiama, and he's deeply popular with the people there. But not so much now that this has all come out. He did have a 12-point lead, but now it's looking rather tenuous. So now it's not going to look real good, and the Liberals are trying to like back away. The claims against him are very big. Like, we're talking claims of a sexual deviant kind of nature. So they're not small claims. Let's go through what's being said about him. It is following a string of criminal charges alleging that he'd sexually abused a man and a 17-year-old boy in two separate incidents dating back several years. Ward pleaded not guilty to the charges, which include 1 count of sexual intercourse without consent, 3 counts of indecent assault, 1 count of common assault. A date for trial is yet to be set, meaning the charges will not be dealt with before the election. Now, justice is going to do its thing. It has its own ecosystem of dealing with this stuff. It shouldn't be beholden to an election cycle whatsoever. But I definitely think, in light of him knowing that this was coming up, I don't think he should have ran. Trials don't just magically appear, and they don't magically, start to get to the point of, we're going to set a trial date. These take often months, or in some other cases, years, to accumulate enough evidence and data that go towards either innocent or guilty conviction. So, in my opinion, him even sitting for this is repugnant. And it's just like a Conservative to hold on to this. He's not willing to resign. No. The Liberals might have pretended to reject him from the Liberal Party and then pretended that they're locking him out of all their talks. But the truth is, they want his vote. The Republicans do it in the USA. There is no bottom. Like Matt Gaetz in the Republican Party had talks that he was dealing in child trafficking. They weren't put off by it. They didn't even reject him as a human. They know that his mate, Joel Greenberg, actually got done for it, and they were seen at regular events together. I mean, this is who we're dealing with. We're dealing with people that just don't have a moral compass whatsoever. So when they're having these talks about what they're willing to accept and what they're not, the standard is so ridiculously low. And so here we are in the strangest election contest in the state where a man could face jail time, running for a re-election in Parliament that for the time being at least he is not welcome in. See, and yet Thursday night it seems no one wants to talk about the elephant in the room. Neither one of his rivals mentioned the fact that Ward is facing these charges and his suspension from the Parliament, or the absence of the Liberal Party forum seat that he notoriously holds. That's going to come up. That really is. So it's super interesting that they're having this discussion. And one of the things that I find about people in these sorts of circles is the things that they don't say. Like, Labor should be mentioning this, but they don't, because they think they're in a polite society. Yeah, okay, it's a polite society to not mention someone is on very serious charges, and that he's just switched over to being an independent that would give the Liberals another vote. I don't see a point in playing games with these people. Tell them that they're bad people and go, look, justice will deal with you. To me, after what happened with George Pell, I think a lot of my faith in the institution of justice, the fact that he was released on a technicality, does bother me. So when they're having these conversations in such bad faith and Labor doesn't want to step up and say what they did, I think it's cowardice to not say to GATH and his team, step away, just step away. You're too much of a blow to our political positions of anyone's to be involved in something like this. If you had any integrity for the job, you would step away, deal with the legal ramifications, whether innocent or guilty, you deal with the legal ramifications, and then you come back later. That's how I believe it should be handled. Loads of people have a different opinion about how these things should be handled, but I think there is this overwhelming sense of, dude, just don't do that. So that's basically where I'm at with it. But next we're going to talk about a different kind of rejection. So Matthew Guy went to an election with the arrogant feeling that just should win because Conservatives have this inherent belief that they're like born to rule everything, like their position should be cemented in some way. And regardless of how grotesque their behavior is, they push that narrative forward. And there's every indication to say, well, Matthew Guy should have been aware of his position, but truly he wasn't. He was in his own little bubble of, well, it doesn't matter if, we're having dinner with mobsters and we look really gross right now, and it doesn't matter if we've sold out every moral compass that we possibly could own. To them, it's like a par for the course kind of thing. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so a dislike of Matthew Guy and relentlessly negative campaign blamed the Liberal Party for the election loss. See, and what they ran with it, and the Murdoch Empire sort of ran it too, was rather this, I just don't like you, I don't need to like you, why do I need to be a decent human being kind of thing. They were so open about their hate of Dean Andrews that they couldn't actually tell you anything positive that they were really going to do. I listened to all of their press conferences and it was a little bit like, what's Dean doing? And it was so caught up, rather than talking about themselves and how positive they could be. It was like, just have a look at the Premier. He's bad enough to look at. That was never ever going to work. Policy cannot be, well, just look at what that guy's doing. That's not how the Australian public responds. A lot of the time I talk about the juxtaposition of Australian politics with the Americans. And the reason I talk about this is because in small pockets like in like New England, the seat of New England, where they talk about Barnaby Joyce, I'm constantly reminded, no matter how deplorable he could be a man running around with leprosy on him. And I'd be like, no, we're still going to touch him. We're still going to kiss the ring. It's utterly repugnant. There is no bottom to. He's a middle-aged man that's an alcoholic that is detestable with his own family. He is the most anti-family man I've ever seen. No, not just because he cheated on his wife. No. He's more repulsive than that. This is the party that apparently told you that they're wonderful with family values. Okay, Barnaby, who didn't want to give his children, his daughters, the Gardasil shop because he was told that it would make them promiscuous, said the man cheating on his wife. It's that kind of stuff. They do this kind of stuff that's grotesque. So rather than running a campaign that's real and embedded in policy, they do this stuff where it's like all stunt and blisters. Former opposition leader Matthew Guy was so disliked and the Liberal election campaign was so negative, Victorians had no reason to vote for him, according to the party president. Greg Mirabella, I'd say that's an association of Sophie Mirabella, chose to compile his own report on the Liberal Party's heavy loss at the 2022 state election, rather than holding formal post-mortem, because he believed that reviews were often ignored. And that's particularly reminiscent of how the Liberal Party operates as a party. They don't do dissections of anything where they take notes. You will never ever see this is like really groundbreaking. Watch any Senate estimates hearing or any hearing at all, and you will see Labor and the Greens and even Independents. They've all got like little notebooks that they're taking meticulous notes in, as am I generally when I'm watching, because I'm going to try to talk about it with you guys and break down exactly where we're at. That's the point to that. But overwhelmingly, there is this idea that when the Liberals sit in, they just sort of do gotcha questions or phrases that they think will get them over the line, which is a little bit grotesque because you're like, we're having a very serious adult table kind of chat and you're still sitting at the kids' tables going, I don't know, what are you? It's like, what was that? What was that? Truly, we come here to do real adult work and you're like, I don't know, what are you? It's so petty and immature, and they ask questions that are so disingenuous in nature. I'm astounded that they get any support at all, that anyone would vote for that. But there's always an idiot in the room that's like, no, I'm going to vote for that guy regardless of how stupid he sounds when he says it. And I think that that's a part of where we're at. We would never have to deal with these idiots like Barnaby Joyce and all the others, if Mark Latham, Pauline Hanson, if we genuinely had people in the room that were like, oh yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I wouldn't even want to give them a preference. I'm going to be so anti these people. I don't even want to see them on a ballot of any kind. But there's these small pockets that are like, no, absolutely. And that's so sad because we're worth more than that, right? We are, as a nation, worth way more than the crap that comes out of Mark Latham, Pauline Hanson, Barnaby Joyce, and any other cretinous, Matt Canavan kind of awfulness. When you look at it, you're like, how did we get here? Like Scott Morrison, yuck. It's gross. And I don't mean like in appearance. I mean like as a human. Like, you could look like anything, because I'm not in any position to be making those sorts of comments. The reason I point that out is because conservatives are worried about people and what they look like and what they sound like and what they're doing. And that's, they think a set of stairs that, if you fall down a set of stairs, that's their attack line. It doesn't matter how injured you are. They think that you're crazy if you need time to recover. They have nothing of substance. What are people voting for when that's their representation? I mean, there are people that voted for Matthew Guy, and it's gross. Okay, leaked excerpts of the finding seen by The Age reveal that Mirabella believes Guy was seen as a worse option when voters compared him to Dean Andrews. Andrews, while rather polarizing, and could not be made more to dislike. Matthew Guy, Mirabella's report noted the 6% drop in the ALP vote came back to them in preferences. Mirabella described the election strategy as relentlessly negative, wrong and counterproductive, and criticised for targeting Andrews. That's what I mean. You can't. While there is a correlation between the conservative talking points of the states to Australia and policy discussion, I don't think we've gone down that as big as a whole as the US. We could, which is why you need to keep a very keen eye on the idiots that vote. And this is why I'm pleased that voting is compulsory, because you kind of got to take it a bit seriously. You got the idiots that will write any name on it and invalidate their vote. And then you've got people that are just indifferent to it and don't understand that there is a clear difference, and having to decipher fact from fiction. Apparently, there's a lot of people that don't realize the sheer scale of how politics impacts their life, which is incredibly sad. Incredibly sad. So when you're seeing this, you're like, why would it have been that much of a drama on you to just, I don't know, look at a candidate and see if it was, an acceptable human being or not? Is your life that busy where you just can't go, hey, that guy lied to me? There's no way they're going to do what they said that they're going to do, or that person definitely doesn't hold the characters of a person I'd like to vote for, or that party has shown relentlessly that they're not going to pay for certain things, and they're going to do things like privatize healthcare and turn it into a US style. That's what I mean. They do have conservatives here have a very US style ideology, but they know that there's no serving of it in public. Hence why, pardon me, when John Howard was Prime Minister, he had to sell the debate of the GST. It's very American to pay for. I drank to avoid that, hoping it would, excuse me. It was very American, and it was designed to make you think that everyone will get a fair hit. No, and the fact that people were sold on the idea of everyone paying a tax when they were already paying a tax is ridiculous. And then they included things like, now that they don't, they included things like sanitary items for women. I mean, seriously, you were trying to tax women for just being women? It's gross. For things that they cannot avoid. Monthly issues for women. It's repugnant. But that's the conservative play-by-play. They don't think about the overwhelming structure of where they sit. It's when you look at them, you always think, what dumb crap are they going to try and pass? Like, they definitely will attack Medicare. That's not like a hyperbolic thing that Labor is saying. You give them power and the structure and enough edgy time and enough time to convince voters, absolutely. They will make you believe that it just doesn't work, so why are we paying for it? It's grotesque. And to know that Americans lose their life in the thousands every year because they cannot afford basic health care. It's so wrong. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is Barnaby's, Bruce Lehman being sued. So this come up and I was like, I'm not entirely sure if he's really thought this action through. So he has a moment where he wants to sue certain publications. He's picking and choosing the ones that get the publications are picking and choosing the ones that they talk about publicly, but he too is picking ones publicly that he'd like to go after. So take a listen to this Media Watch take on that issue. What I will do is here we go. Just so you get an understanding of what this is. Okay, so no sound.
Launched legal action against the media.
But now, to the defamation case we've all been waiting for.
Some breaking news now. Bruce LEHRMANN has launched legal action against the media. He's filed defamation proceedings over coverage of rape allegations made by his former colleague Brittany Higgins. The lawsuit names Network 10 and News Corp. LEHRMANN pleaded not guilty to sexually assaulting Higgins, and the charges against him were ultimately dropped.
Yes, the man accused of raping Brittany Higgins in Parliament House in March 2019 is now going after the media who broke the story. And bringing us this hot news before LEHRMANN's statement of claim was publicly released was The Australian and its columnist Janet Albrechtsen, who obviously got the drop from LEHRMANN or his legal team.
Recklessly indifferent to truth. Bruce LEHRMANN sues Lisa Wilkinson for damages.
That story was published online late on Tuesday night. And next morning, the Australian's editors made sure that reckless Lisa was front and centre on page 1, as the paper quoted extensively from the unpublished statement of claim. And why did Albrechtsen get the scoop? No doubt because she's written exclusives like this, with claims backed by leaked police documents that charges should never have been laid, that a witness in the trial felt humiliated by the prosecutor, that the case should never have gone ahead, and this weekend another front page questioning whether the DPP was texting his builder during the trial. Those are just 4 of around a dozen articles Albrechtsen has co-authored in the last 2 months, all of which have blown in LEHRMANN's or his lawyer's direction. And what's to note about her latest story? Well, the headline completely fails to mention that the Australian stablemate news.com.au and its star reporter Samantha Maiden are also being sued by LEHRMANN. And while the article does mention that in passing, the rest is all Lisa, 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 with quotes like this.
The statements of claim said it could be inferred that Wilkinson was seeking to exploit the false allegations of sexual assault as made by Ms Higgins for her own personal and professional gain.
And
Mr LEHRMANN further claims Wilkinson and Network 10 were recklessly indifferent to the truth or falsity when they alleged he raped Ms Higgins.
now this is bizarre because LEHRMANN levels the same charges, almost word for word, against Samantha Maiden. Yet Albrechtsen keeps her right out of the spotlight. And while we're told that
The Australian approached Network 10 and Wilkinson for comment.
there is no mention of seeking comment from Maiden or news.com.au. And in our view, it is not an oversight. Because Albrechtsen, who did not return our phone call, was just as one-eyed in December, when she and Stephen Rice broke news that Lehrmann was gearing up for action.
Leading media lawyer joins Lehrmann defamation team.
That story had 7 mentions of Lisa Wilkinson, 4 mentions of Network 10, and 1 of The Project, but precisely none, yes, none, of Samantha Maiden and news.com.au, who were actually hours ahead of Wilkinson in making Brittany Higgins' allegations public. Fancy that. And it wasn't only the Australian wearing an eye patch. News Corp's Sky News was just as cyclopean, with straplines saying, Lisa Wilkinson sued for defamation, and headlines on its website also shouting about you-know-who. And if you clicked on the video, you got 3 minutes of Andrew Bolt criticising Lisa, with only a 3-second mention of Sam Maiden. And questions like this.
What is Bruce Lehrmann claiming Wilkinson did wrong?
To which the Australian's media writer Sophie Ellsworth replied,
that in the statement of claim, Lisa Wilkinson was, it's inferring that Lisa Wilkinson was seeking to exploit the false allegations of sexual assault as made by Miss Higgins for her own personal and professional gain.
Missing from their chat was any mention that the statement of claim against News Corp's Samantha Maiden makes exactly the same charges of seeking to exploit the false allegations for personal and professional gain, and of being recklessly indifferent to the truth or falsity of the claims. So why does News Corp make it all about Lisa? Because she drives clicks, she's married to Peter Fitzsimons, whom they also love to bait, and of course she is not employed by News Corp. So, what is the chance that any of Lehrmann's actions, including one now threatened against the ABC, will get to court and Lehrmann win? We still think it is unlikely. Higgins said in December she was prepared to take the stand.
If required, I am willing to defend the truth as a witness in any potential civil cases brought about by Mr. Lehrmann.
And last week she repeated her pledge, adding,
a timely reminder.
So, would Bruce Lehrmann really be up for a full-scale trial? Defamation lawyer Justin Quill told us in December,
Lehrmann suing would be a case of a man going back into the lion's den to retrieve his hat.
explaining,
He would have to give evidence and subject himself and his story to cross-examination, which he was able to avoid in the criminal matter.
Lehrmann will also have to prove he was identified by Wilkinson and Maiden's stories, even though they didn't name him, and that might not be easy. But given how judges treat the media, you'd think they too would be keen to avoid court. So this looks like being a high-stakes game of poker to see who folds first.
Okay, so as we're watching that, I need you to know something. ABC plans to take a lot of its broadcasting off Twitter. Now, one can speculate that the very right-wing friendly ABC, now you can make disputes about how right-wing it is. You can watch any episode of Insiders and you will be surprised at how many left-wing pundits are on there. But it's abundantly clear to me personally that David Spear's being taken from Sky and that sort of thing is a very, and Ida Buttrose used to be helping the Liberal Party campaign and all that kind of stuff. So to see something like this from the ABC, check this out, I wanted to add as a side note, is disturbing. So I just want to increase the, okay, so it's got, hi everyone, this is Twitter account, closing on Monday, February the 20th. Please follow ABC News for the latest news and information. You can find breakfast news on ABC iView, and we're still on Facebook. Now, this is so you can't engage them, because their belief is this, that if you can actually communicate with the people that run the mastheads of this network, because they have lurched so far to the right, and in truth, they know what they're doing. They're not stupid. They know how this looks. But at this point with Ida, they just don't care. They're getting a little bit like Channel 7, you know. They're pretending that all this trivial stuff matters more. And whatever stuff that they can hawk on their little shows. The ABC has largely brought in its own revenue. That's what's even crazier. Most networks like this got its own viewership. It was worth its weight in gold, you know, in advertisements and stuff. It was, you know, the amazing ABC. So whatever we were spending on it at any point, just remember it brought in its own damn revenue. And it gave you quality. It didn't just tell you something because it didn't want to hurt your feelings. It told you things because it might hurt your feelings, but because you needed to know. ABC has been my friend since I was a child. It was there for Bananas in Pajamas. It was there for Play School. And it was there when I got older and I watched a bit of TV shows and got information off them about school closures and that sort of thing. And then as an adult, I got to enjoy Media Watch and several other things. So the ABC is sort of cradle to the grave sort of viewing, in my opinion. It has something for everybody. So what Ida did is so deplorable. I can't picture that this is recoverable. And this is what the Conservatives wanted. They don't want you informed. They just want you to be pissed that someone's telling you the reality of the situation. And this is why you don't hire Conservatives to do things. Just don't vote for people that will do terrible things in the end and ruin institutions like this. They're very valuable. And I don't think you can put a figure on how information is a key to a good society. Without the ABC, I think we would have been lurching further to the right. It's a shame what they did. You know, they got rid of fact checkers and all sorts of things to keep the Conservatives happy, which is disgraceful within itself. I'm deeply troubled by their shift, and you should be too. So as we're dealing in that, I want to talk about the fact that not only did they do that, but there is more. Just don't give them the opportunity to stuff this up any further. Next thing I want to talk about is Barnaby this week in Parliament shows himself that he is not the brightest cookie in the tin. And every time he does this, you think, you know, the standard is so low to what you want to see in your Parliament. Like, look, just don't do dumb shit, okay? Just don't do that really dumb thing that you're attempting. You know, don't vote for something stupid. You know, or don't be too drunk to vote in Barnaby's case. Take a listen to this very own goal over the Anzac Day public holiday because he's an idiot and doesn't understand basic things and how his government basically wrecks things. And then when it turns into an own goal, he's like, well, I still got to say things.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Will the Prime Minister overturn his government's recent decision, which now allows public servants to boycott the Anzac Day public holiday and substitute it for another day of leave out of protest?
Order. Give the call to the Leader of the House. The Deputy Leader of the Opposition will cease interjecting. Give the call to the Leader of the House.
Mr. Speaker, the question goes to workplace relations issues, and if I can go through that. First of all, in terms of Anzac Day, we are in a room of 151 representatives, all of whom take Anzac Day incredibly seriously, all of whom on both sides have direct relationships with veterans, and as a government, we share the view that every other member in this place shares about the significance and the importance of Anzac Day. For the entire 9 years of the last government, a flexibility provision applied that applies to a series of workplaces around the country. A provision for almost the entire 9 years of the previous government, and you'll find businesses around the country have provisions where individual workers can choose to work on a different day and to switch days of public holidays, not as an issue of protest, but as an issue of flexibility that has worked for employers and employees across all public holidays around the country. Now, if those opposite believe that those rules that have been in place for their entire 9 years, if those opposite believe that those rules that are asked for by employers to be in agreements all around the country, if they actually want to draw a line under that because they think there's some sort of culture war to raise questions where none should be asked, then they may well want to go down that path. But for their 9 years, the same provisions applied.
Has the minister concluded his answer?
Now, this is a notorious own goal. They know that these are their own goals. They're trying to be American. They're trying to culture war the shit out of anything that they can, because they believe that rather than do real work in policy, they would rather culture war things. You know, you don't care about our country enough. You're not patriotic enough. Okay, sure. But are you, or are you just going to say no to everything, Peter Dutton? I mean, really? Their fake outrage machine doesn't work here, and that's abundantly clear. Are they claiming that it's not an outrage machine? Because I've got plenty of evidence to show that that's exactly what they do. And here's the thing. They align on these weird party lines about how they're going to culture war people into things, and then when it backfires, they're like, "Oh no, I didn't mean it like that." Or, "Why would I say like it?" "Oh no, you got it all out of context." And they're like, "You didn't read the context." And you're like, "No, these are your words, are they not?" And they're like, "Yeah, but there's context." Okay, what's the context? How can you make it sound better? "Oh, well, I don't know, but you didn't do it." You know, and that's basically their whole argument for the whole thing is, "I don't know, but you didn't give it a better context. You didn't spin it enough to make what I was doing sound acceptable." That's not anyone's job. Our job is to hear what you're saying and dissect it from there. If you're an idiot and say something stupid, it's not up to the media to make it sound less deplorable. It's so wrong on so many levels. Okay, so we have another one of moments where you're looking at them and you're like, do you do policy? And are you interested in doing the real work? Turns out, not so much. Take a listen to this and tell me what you think about Dutton's approach to fixing things around the country.
The opposition is basically defining itself as a party which is opposed to everything. You know, the National Reconstruction Fund, which is about kickstarting manufacturing in this country and having more things made in Australia, seems to me to be a no-brainer. Who could be against that? Peter Dutton. Our housing fund is about ensuring we build more houses in the middle of a housing crisis and provide more social and affordable housing for people struggling and for people who are homeless. It really beggars belief that any politician in the country, let alone a major political party, could be threatening to block a fund which will put more houses into the market, more roofs over the head of people doing it tough. It beggars belief, which is why we're calling on the opposition, the crossbench, the Green, and in fact all the members and supporters of those parties to send a message to them to say, don't block the housing fund, don't block the Rebuilding Australia Fund, made in Australia and more roofs over people's heads. Who could be against that? The opposition.
This is to copy the US when they were opposing the Build Back Better scheme by Biden. See, this is where I was talking about correlation in relation to the response of the Australian political right. How they will just oppose it, and they will go back to their hometown talking about how they worked, to get all this stuff together. So if this policy passes, they're going to all go back to their prospective seats, and then they're going to go, see, I got you more social housing. It doesn't matter if they vote against it. They're going to claim it as a victory because they don't want to do the work. They just want to own the left. And here's where I'm calling on all the political parties. Do not do a stunt and add anything stupid. Like the Greens were saying that they want it to be bigger. So they're not about negotiating this. Do not pull a stupid stunt that is going to put real roadblocks to this kind of legislation. It does have the same sort of modeling of the Build Back Better of the US policy, and we are framing it to the same communication levels, and how it will make the country a deflate in the way that it is. It'll create because inflation is at an all-time high, and no, giving you a pay increase does not, I repeat, not, if you're on the lower end of the income scale, has no impact on inflation whatsoever. There's no evidence that it does. Because inflation is more to do with the stock market. So when you're hearing them say something like, if you get a pay rise, that's going to affect inflation, that's not really how it works. It's based around how the stock market views itself and how big corporations are coping. And really, they like to talk themselves up, and like in terms of housing, how their big negative gearing groups are going. And resources. So right now, we do have enough gas to support us. But because of this weird deal that John Howard did with the Chinese, on these weird contracts where they get cheaper gas than extracted from our country than the Australians do. I don't know on why God's green earth anybody would cut a deal with the Liberals, with the Chinese to go, no, you take our gas and you can get it at cheaper prices than our own people. I don't know who would strike such an idiotic deal. But it's conservatives. It doesn't have to make sense. It just is. And this creates a moment where inflation becomes a massive issue, when resources become harder and the job market is harder to retain staff because people don't want to do these low-paid jobs because there's no money in it. No one wants to be, being paid $15 to $20 for something. There will always be a need for these low-paid jobs. But my issue is that because they're not being filled quick enough too, because there's no enticement, because you haven't made it appealing enough to people to do those jobs, which is where immigration becomes the major exploitation of like fruit pickers and stuff like that. You just haven't appealed to people enough to make them want those jobs. And there are just some jobs where if you pay decently, people will come in droves. And the inflation thing, I think, is rubbish. It's all something done to manipulate the market so big rich people can make more money out of a devastating hit to the poorer households. And I believe that Labor is 100% right in saying everyone needs to come together on it. Okay. An election day vote scandal. So on the election day, they had a time where they were like, we're going to pretend like if the left gets voted in, that it's their fault if the votes are started. Two things, idiots, that thought that this was the fantastic plan. One, you were still in power. So you were dumb enough to go, yeah, I have the power at the moment, but I'm going to blame the other party that isn't even in, because if they win, it's their fault. Oh, that's when a talking point hasn't been thought through. This is Conservative 101, dunce cap idiots. All right, take a listen.
I'm asked by the member opposite about the potential for votes attempting to get here. I seem to remember millions of Australians getting a text message,
Disgrace.
on election day, not when we were the government, when they were the government, getting a text message. It's true that perhaps the minister wasn't the one who authorised it. Perhaps the other minister for Home Affairs was the one who authorised it. One of the most disgraceful manipulations that we have seen in Australian politics on your watch. I'm asked by the member opposite.
So that is a sign that they're not about taking things seriously. They did these stunts, and very, very like the LNP to just pull a stunt of, well, we'll send out a text message saying it's the left's fault if votes suddenly restarted. As if we were back in like 2008 and they could just culture war the shit out of anything that they wanted. And you're like, no, that's a bit weird that you're actually in power and you're trying to say if you lose power suddenly the votes are all going to restart. Dude, that's election day. You're still in the seat. Like, how did you think that people were going to buy that? Do you think Australians are that stupid? Because I definitely don't. If you're under the belief system that people are like, they've got power, the right has power, and if the left gets it, suddenly everything's bad. You're like, well, show me. Oh, no, the boats will definitely restart. Like, they didn't really stop. You just intercepted and did this weird turnaround thing, which is another weird thing. And then they would call it on-scene matters if they came. And be like, we're not going to talk about the operational matters. You're like, no, that's a little bit deceptive. They never stopped. They just stopped telling you about it. The idiots was, I don't know what their strategy is. All I do, but it's not very bright. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is the LNP and education. This is what I mean. They so culture war everything. The voice to Parliament will go in a referendum. Now, there's plenty of information out there about what details will be provided on that. For instance, it is not a third chamber. It is just a voice whereby the government will take into consideration on policy to do with our First Nations people. It will not, I repeat, not change how Parliament actually works. Consider it as an advisory board from the people affected by what happens in Indigenous communities. That's all it's gonna be. So if you're like wetting the bed thinking, oh, no, there's a big voice that's gonna come and eat me, calm your farm. No, and it's weird that there's like even a no campaign at all. like same-sex marriage. If you're worried about two people getting married that love each other and want to be intimate with one another, how does that affect you again? See, it becomes a weird moment where you're like, if there's an Indigenous voice to this country, how does that affect people of non-Indigenous descent? It doesn't. It's just more support for those who haven't had a voice. If you're weirdly threatened by our First Nations people having a voice, understand how threatened they must have felt by not having one. Disgusting. Disgusting. With the very fact that there's even a no campaign is sick and twisted. And I don't understand how we try and make it sound like we're totally acceptable to a no campaign. It's gross. All right, so let's pull that one up. Okay. So the LNP's Sarah Henderson demands the federal government intervene on the state's education departments to ensure no bias towards the Voice Yes campaign. But Anthony Chisholm kills her pretty quickly. Listen to this, and it's quite extraordinary to see.
I support states implementing the curriculum as they see fit. I would point out, Senator Henderson, that I think all premiers across the country support the Voice as well, including the Liberal Premier of New South Wales and the Liberal Premier of Tasmania.
But Minister, that's actually not relevant. What's relevant is that the national curriculum presents an
See that? It's not relevant if other people agree. It's more relevant that I do my culture war. That's what she's doing. And it's stupid, and this is why it gets shut down pretty quickly.
Biased and impartial view of civics and this issue. So again, can I please just ask you, does the Albanese government support the no case being taught in Australian schools as well as the yes case?
We support state jurisdictions being able to implement the curriculum as they see fit, which was the position of the previous government from the best of my recollection, Senator Henderson.
See, now that makes it interesting when they're like, no, we're going to have the same sense that the previous government did. We're not going to intervene on these matters, and why would you ask them to? Oh, no. Don't want to ruin your whole culture war thing. Why would I do that? It's a weird position that they take. And if you want to take it, sure, but you're going to look like an idiot every time. We're going to wipe the floor with that kind of idiocy. There is no place for this kind of American-style culture war. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit anyone's narrative. So the very fact that we're having this disingenuous debate again, if you're so threatened by the First Nations people having a voice, imagine how they felt not having one. It's deplorable. And Warren Mundine, what a deplorable human you are to be anti that for your own people. And Jacinta Price. It's ugly and it's gross. And whatever Gina Reinhart gives you for that, God have mercy on your soul. You are supposed Catholics. Good luck with that. It's repugnant to its core. Okay, next one I have for you. Senators probe into the Murray-Darling Basin project, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's like they're looking into exactly what the LNP did. They ripped off community so the big cotton farmers could get water. That's the gist of that. You're hearing that right. That's exactly what they did. Okay, so take a listen to this as we get to it. Okay.
So there is only one number, Senator. It's 605, and it's on the assumption that all of those projects came into operation in the way that they were notified. If you just brought a project in...
You can't bullshit a bullshitter. I'm telling you that we all know that projects were accounted for with amounts. Yes, the 605 comes into being because of the way they interact with each other, but each and every one of those projects was...
You can't bullshit a bullshitter. So you finally own your stuff, Conservatives, eh? That's an interesting comment.
It's accounted for.
So there is only...
It's phenomenal to watch. They undo themselves every time. They get all outraged. They think they've got you, and then they're like, oh, no, you can't bullshit a bullshitter, so why would I even go there? No, it's just horrendous. Okay, so next we're going to go into a bit of new US stuff on the back end of this. So Fox News host thought Trump's election claims were totally bullshit. They knew from the jump. In fact, they knew so much that there was text messages between people in the Fox organization like Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, and a whole raft of others, Laura Ingraham, you know. So they knew what they were doing. So let's dissect that for a moment. Fox News host thought Trump's election fraud claims were total BS. Court filings show Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, and Sean Hannity. Host of Fox News privately ridiculed Donald Trump's claims that the 2020 election was stolen, while simultaneously peddling the same lies on it, according to court filings and the lawsuit against them. So Dominion and Smartmatic, both electric voting company groups, are taking to that. So there is a push to have it spoken about now, and revealed exactly what role these idiots played. Oh, I haven't presented it. So the right-wing personalities, Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham are among those named in the $1.6 billion Dominion voting system and the sale of electronic voting hardware and software. But they're suing Fox News parent company, Fox News, for maligning its reputation. He's acting like an insane person, Hannity allegedly wrote of Trump in the weeks following the election, as the host continued to push the so-called big lie during his top election prime show, and he aided the succession of election deniers and has gone on guests. Even billionaire owner Rupert Murdoch was dismissive of the former president's false claims, and in the filing calling them really crazy stuff. In one memo, Fox News executive criticizing Trump's scattergun approach in pursuing the lawsuits in numerous states to overturn his defeat. They lost 60 Court of Appeals. Some of them he had given, he appointed judges, even were like, dude, you don't understand how a lawsuit works. You've got to have evidence, and you don't have evidence, so therefore you don't have a case. You know, it's that simple, you know. And the government could substantially prove over each prospective state that there was no cheating going on in their states. And I thought about this heavily, about why Republican states even were like, there's no cheating here. Because the Republicans, as bad and as evil as what they are, they would realize that they would even have to have the appearance, regardless of how much gerrymandering that they have going on. Gerrymandering is where they draw seats to make it favourable for themselves. Even with their very favourable gerrymandered seats, they couldn't, and I repeat, could not have the approach of saying that they cheated in the election to give Joe Biden the seat. Why would a Republican say Joe Biden won? It doesn't make sense. In one hand, they're saying I'm anti-Trump and I prefer Joe Biden. That can't be good for their state. Worse, they're saying that they're rigging elections. So it's not a shock that this time they're like, no, that didn't happen. But make no mistake, they are having legislation drawn up to support crazy claims that Trump did make on voting, like absentee voting and a whole raft of others. Ballot harvesting. So if you had like a retirement village where you could go around, collect their ballots and then put them in the post office box, that's considered ballot harvesting. They're trying to get rid of that. In some states successfully so. So the disabled can't vote and elderly can't vote and people that are working are going to find it harder. Yeah. Grotesque, isn't it? Okay. And in that same vein, I want to talk about how they knew what they were doing was wrong. Take a listen to Ari Melba as he talks about how he knew it was crazy wrong. Oh.
Setback for the most powerful. Our top story is a setback for the most powerful conservative megaphone in America, literally, measurably. And it's also drawing in new legal heat on the alleged liars and Trump allies who have been a part of an attack on our democracy, your right to vote, for many years. This is a case we've been tracking. So if you watch The Beat regularly, you may recall it, but there are new developments tonight. There's this wave of lawsuits, some of them quite effective, against alleged defamation, lies, and specifically the powerful Fox News empire. I'm talking about these multi-billion-dollar lawsuits about the conspiracy theories that many view as a direct line to feeding the insurrection. Now, the people suing Fox are basically winning the first rounds of this battle. So this is moving forward. Specifically, the news tonight, a unanimous ruling by judges against Fox in one of these cases, a multi-billion-dollar defamation case. So that green lights the next phase. Now, the suit is brought by a voting company, Smartmatic. And that's an important thing in the law. When you hear about standing and who's hurt, you might feel that as a citizen of our democracy, you were hurt by all of Trump's lies. But the courts don't view it that way. You have to have a more direct, provable hurt or financial pain. And these voting companies say they have that. They also allege that Fox falsely defamed them in ways that could completely upend their business by pushing lies and hosting knowingly conspiracy theories.
So basically, they're admitting to their stuff. They know Trump's lawyers can't walk in here and say that they weren't sure of all the details, and Fox can't do it either. If they're caught lying, there's like criminal stuff involved here. You can't, this could lead to a very criminal situation if they're caught lying in this case.
By Trump's lawyers to falsely portray the voting company, Smartmatic, as some sort of foreign enemy that was actually illegally flipping votes to Biden. Now, real quick, you will note the hypocrisy there. The Trump aides who were caught trying to steal the election, in some ways trying to overturn it in a manner that might not have been illegal, and we've explained some of those plots, in other ways that clearly were illegal. The ones trying to steal the election were also the ones accusing a voting machine company of doing what they, the Trump folks, were doing, stealing the election. And that's not all. This case, which I'm telling you just got the green light, it names names. Goes after specific anchors, goes after Rudy Giuliani for knowingly and falsely pushing the lies, and Maria Bartiromo, Janine Pirro, and Lou Dobbs, names you might recognize from the whole Fox News empire. And Giuliani is going to have to answer for it in court. This new development has brought him back in. Now, the alleged lies started with Trump and his lawyers after losing the election in 2020. And they were reported out with this reckless disregard, according to the company that says it was so hurt by this. I mean, let's remember, you might, as a news consumer, know that there weren't voting machine companies flipping votes, that there was no evidence of that, that it was certainly never proven in court.
And that's where we're at. We're at a point where we know for a fact that no votes were flipped for Biden. And much like how Ari talks about the provable hurt to that company, they won't be trusted in Republican states ever again. They can't use them even in blue states. I think it's going to come up. But the threat to the democracy was very real. He was orchestrating some appalling acts of overturning that election. Trump knew he lost, and he was already setting up a heads I win, tails you lose. Okay, in the lead up to the election, he was making like crazy claims like, well, the only way I can lose is if you cheat. No, that's crazy. The only way you can lose is if you vote it out. But sure, be a weirdo. And just being crazy like that. And he was like, if you vote by mail, yeah, absolutely, you know, you can cheat. Okay, considering that the only one caught cheating were Republicans, sure. But this was less than 0%. Like, there was not an actual, there was like this odd thing, and like two people that were Republicans that were caught trying to cheat. One of them was a man in Arizona. So what he did was his wife had passed away through COVID, and he voted for his deceased wife. But yet he was on TV talking about how he was cheated and how everyone cheated. It turns out he's going to face charges for exactly that. No, it's Ohio. Correction. So that's how that played out. And it was repugnant to see them acting like victims around that. Okay, for our last story tonight, we are going to talk about how the Republicans stupidly handed the left an amazing gift of, oh no, you just said the quiet part out loud, you idiots. Okay, how their stunts backfired yet again. Okay.
Republican stunt that backfired on them at the State of the Union. And I sit down in Washington, D.C. with Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg to talk about Sarah Huckabee Sanders' dystopian response to Biden's speech, Marjorie Taylor Greene screaming in the chamber, what's being done to rectify the State of the Union address. He beyond exceeded expectations in that speech, which I think was owed in large part to the fact that, yet again, Republicans spent every waking minute making Biden out to be, this senile old man who can't remember his own name. And so when Biden was able to find the podium, it was already a win. But of course, he went on to deliver a really, really strong speech, focusing especially heavily on job creation, on the economy, on the middle class. But there was one moment in particular that wasn't scripted that stole the show.
In the last 2 years, my administration has cut the deficit by more than $1.7 trillion, the largest deficit reduction in American history. Under the previous administration, the American deficit went up 4 years in a row. Because those record deficits, no president added more to the national debt in any 4 years than my predecessor. Nearly 25% of the entire national debt that took over 200 years to accumulate was added by just one administration alone, the last one. They're the facts. Check it out. Check it out. How did Congress respond to that debt? They did.
Kevin McCarthy looks so butthurt because he knows that he's caught. And that's why he's not doing this.
The right thing. They lifted the debt ceiling 3 times without preconditions or crisis. They paid American bills to prevent an economic disaster in the country. So tonight I'm asking the Congress to follow suit. Let's commit here tonight to the full faith and credit of the United States of America will never, ever be questioned. So some of my Republican friends want to take the economy hostage. I get it, unless I agree to their economic plans. All of you at home should know what those plans are. Instead of making the wealthy pay their fair share, some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority.
Busted, and they know that they're busted. They so did.
Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my office. I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a copy of the proposal. That means Congress doesn't vote. Well, I'm glad to see you. No, I tell you, I enjoy conversion.
Hey, I don't think I need to introduce myself, but if you don't know me, I'm...
As we all apparently agree, Social Security and Medicare is off the books now, right? They're not to be discussed? All right.
Social Security and Medicare is off the books now, right? Yep, that's exactly what he just got him to admit to.
All right. We got unanimity.
So Biden was explaining that he would protect earned benefit programs like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid from very accurate and well-documented attacks by Republicans, which are no secret, and I'll get to that in a moment. But because Republicans doth protested too much and made sure to make a big scene because they thought that would be a good way to score an easy win against him, instead Biden forced them to avow those programs and stand up and applaud for them, and got everyone on record basically promising to protect earned benefits. Was it under duress? You bet. But did he get a win anyway thanks to an unforced error by Republicans? Absolutely. Now, there are, of course, those who say, well, Republicans weren't really going to go after earned benefits anyway. Couple things. First, Biden still scored a win here by being the one dictating the terms of the conversation. He was the one who seemed strong. It was him who got those Republicans to stand up and applaud for Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, which they very clearly were doing under duress. Again, they didn't look strong. They looked backed into a corner. They looked like they were reacting because they had to react. And by the way, to do it at the hands of a guy who they themselves have branded, this confused old man, makes them look even more weak here. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is that Republicans have been vying to eliminate Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid for literal decades. Do not let anyone convince you that history started yesterday and that we don't have actual years and years and years of footage and recordings from Republicans vowing to dismantle your earned benefits. That's the bad faith bullshit that the media buys into, that where as soon as a Republican says, no, I wouldn't possibly want to eliminate Social Security, and then the press is like, well, there it is. He said he wouldn't do it, so it must be true. I'll just type that shit out and post an article about it because apparently journalism is just blindly accepting whatever these known liars say to me. Like, maybe let's all just agree to have some self-respect and not play dumb as to how the GOP feels about what they themselves call entitlement programs. And just to add to that, we have plenty of proof that that is what they stood for. There was a great clip of Republican Senator Mike Lee looking absolutely perplexed when Biden accused Republicans of wanting to cut those programs. Like, the way that Mike Lee's face looked, it was as if Biden just claimed that Republicans want to walk into hospitals and pick out babies from the nursery and just eat them whole. Like, he looked so outraged. And yet, here's a clip of Mike Lee that may just undermine that whole shtick.
I'm here right now to tell you one thing that you probably haven't ever heard from a politician. It will be my objective to phase out Social Security, to pull it up by the roots and get rid of it.
See, they were always going to do it. You hand the Conservative any bit of power, this is what they're going to do.
People who advise me politically always tell me that's dangerous, and I tell them, in that case, it's not worth my running.
And of course, there's plenty more. Ron Johnson, Mitch McConnell, Rick Scott has his plan to sunset all federal legislation after 5 years. And if it's worth reauthorizing, then they'll just bring it back. And let's be honest, you would be more likely to see Republicans authorize a kindergarten level critical race theory program than to authorize Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid again. So again, if you read the news and you hear someone say that Republicans have already come out against cutting those programs, please use like a single ounce of discernment. But the fact that we're even talking about this at all is owed entirely to the Republican Party's biggest problem right now, and that is that they want the attention. Their capital is cashing in on the attention economy. They needed to get up and scream and call Biden a liar and challenge him during his speech because they have every incentive in the world to just appeal to their basest instincts because that's why they're there. It's not to govern. It's not to pass legislation. It's not to lower costs for their constituents. It is to be more famous. That's it. They're holding Twitter hearings because their tweets aren't getting enough likes and they need someone to blame because their top priority is building a following for themselves. They're holding Hunter Biden dick pic hearings because they know it'll get picked up on Fox News and they can cash in for a 5-minute cable hit. If you can tell me which part of investigating Twitter or Hunter Biden's penis helps anyone other than those Republicans looking for attention for themselves, I'm all ears. And so, yes, their desperation for attention pretty much left the Republicans disarmed when it comes to eliminating earned benefits. But it also represents an issue for them moving forward. Because on one hand, you have Americans consistently rejecting these loud extremist Republicans at the ballot box, from Trump to Kari Lake, Dr. Oz, Herschel Walker, while on the other hand, every indication shows that it's only getting worse. When Joe Wilson, Republican from South Carolina, called Obama a liar at his State of the Union speech in 2009, it was this massive scandal. Now it's basically expected from the right. There is no moderation in that party. And in fact, what moderates are left have basically been castrated by the extremists, by, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and Matt Gaetzes and Jim Jordans. People sometimes criticize my videos if I cover Marjorie Taylor Greene, and they ask why I give her the airtime, since that's exactly what she wants. And the answer is because if they are going to make this extremist the face of that party, then who am I to help them by hiding her? I didn't elect her. I didn't put her on committees. I didn't make her best buds with the Speaker of the House. I didn't make her the face of the GOP. They did. And if they want to put an extremist front and center, knowing full well that over and over in election after election, Americans continue to repudiate those very people, then that's not my problem.
Yep. So if they're going to make idiots of themselves, let them do it to themselves. And that's how I'm going to approach them too. You want to make an idiot of yourself? Fine, I'll pass your name all around and then we'll see who works out in the end on that one. So I want to thank you for a wonderful evening, and I want to say thank you for joining me, for those who could and for those who will watch me later. Playback is available and it is pinned to the top of the group. Thank you for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Thank you. Night.